have some extra help as well. So either being a seventh defender coming out of the goal to help, or even moving them just to about half tank so that they can engage and help the ball. And then also causing confusion. And I think this is another part that we tend to overthink about when we go down these roads here is, and you will see in some of the videos later, but pulling out a seventh person is something that's not very practiced, right? Or even practiced against. And so the confusion that it can cause to the opposite team is helpful, right? Or can be helpful and can cause them to make a mistake. The regaining control portion, I call them out of math situations. So essentially this can be at any point in time when we want to change some momentum or we're out of the math. So we're down 2 goals with 2 minutes, right? If we had the ball, or sorry, it would be like a minute and a half, right? So we don't have the ball, it's the other team's ball, we're down 2 goals. If they use their whole shot clock and we use our whole shot clock and they use their whole shot clock, the game's over. And even if I score on my possession and they don't score on either theirs, we've lost. So ways to go ahead and change that momentum there a little bit, forcing the offense to maybe take a shot too quickly, or take an ill-advised shot or things like that are other ways to think about moving through here.
So let's talk about now the extra attacker. So, you got a couple options. Do you want to use your goalie or do you want to use your next best available bench option? So with regards to the extra attacker using your goalie, I want everyone on here if you want to, close your eyes, think of your goaltender. Do you want possibly the game in the hands of your goalie? Do you want your goalie out playing as your 7th player? Can you envision that? All right. And if you're comfortable with that, that's awesome. That's great. So, typically if you're in that situation, you're pulling your goalie. The most common way we're thinking of is you're down by a goal. You need that goal. So is your goalie one of your top 7 field players that you're going to trust to be in that situation? That goalie should be comfortable playing the field. You as a coach need to be comfortable with your goalie playing in the field, as this could be your only option. You may not be in a position where you can sub that player out and put somebody else as a goalie in there. The goalie also has to understand that they're in this situation to play offense, and or be in a pressure defensive situation, man to man. When we've done this before in situations, think about your goaltender. You do nothing but train them to play defense, take shots, stop the ball. And then you're going to ask them to go out of the cage. You go down the pool, maybe 10 seconds left, or there's 10 seconds left and you're trying a 7-on-6. The other team gets the ball. A lot of times that goalie's first reaction is to immediately start sprinting back to their own cage. Well, at this point, the game's lost unless you can regain the ball. And so you've got to convince your goaltender at that point, or at some point, that they're going to have to play pressure defense, and you almost have to forget about the goal. And so that being said, your goalies should be in a position where they're practicing both shooting and some sort of pressure passing. Ian, you referenced your goalie. I'll let you tell what you guys do at Shores with your goaltenders.
Yeah, so I think I can rewind here a little bit. The way I started originally thinking about this concept of how involved our goalies should be or how prepared they should be to play in the field was essentially when the goalie gets chased in any situation after a shot, and they just most of the time look so uncomfortable with what they're doing. And I caught myself being really frustrated with this because in my brain I go, we do so much ball control swimming, we do so much pressure, things like that during our practices, especially with our youngest age groups, that there's no excuse why they seem uncomfortable or look like they are literally swimming for their lives in these moments here. And then I started to work a little bit more backwards and have this connection that we really aren't getting our goalies in those situations. And so we started putting our goalies more and more in these situations at younger times to make them more comfortable. And then it kind of extends out and breaks up their training where we're doing ball swims or ball control, and they'll do a time with ball pickups and protection. The one that always drives me crazy is when a goalie's being pressed and they turn the ball over when they're trying to pass because they literally have no idea what they're doing. And so making sure that we're building those kind of concepts into our practices. And so then by virtue of that, now it can extend to being a center defender, right? So watching some video and going back and being contemplative about, where we're making some mistakes and some situations we're trying to be in, seeing our goalies playing right directly behind of a center when I'm asking them to play in front, because they've literally never practiced that before in their life. And so some of them are athletic enough to figure those things out. But I tend to err on the side of, let me help you first before I figure out what you're actually capable of doing, because I don't always trust what every athlete is capable of doing, especially in today's athletes that we're seeing coming out. So just kind of incorporating some of those things into what you want to be. And again, I don't want you to feel like, I don't want everyone to feel like you need to be in a box, right? So I get really nervous about saying exactly what the situation should be that you should be preparing them for. But whatever situation you want your goalie in this situation to be prepared for, then you need to make sure you're practicing it, right? And so it doesn't just apply to this situation of swimming up and taking a shot, but it can apply to being a center defender. It can be applied to swimming the ball away from pressure. Whatever you want them to be good at, make sure you give them time to practice
it. And again, if you have any questions, please throw them out anytime, or throw them in the chat, or just whatever. So with the extra attacker, if you're going to use a bench option, okay, if there's time, you can substitute your goalie out and put a field player as a goalie. That player would have to report to the table as a goalie, so they would need to check in ahead of time. This is probably not a decision you're going to make during the middle of a timeout with 15 seconds left, because you're going to have know ahead of time and think about this as you're doing this, because the referees are probably not going to wait for you to do this. So it's probably just an option in the back of your mind. Okay, if we're going to pull our goalie and put a field player in, who's that going to be? Do we have the goalie cap with us to make sure that they can get in and substitute in as the goaltender? You can obviously substitute at a stoppage. If there was a goal scored on you, now you're down by 1, pull them in there. If there's a timeout, etc. And finally, if there's time allows for it, and if your pool is one that will allow you to sub on the fly at half, you have the goalie swim over, or they can certainly go to the penalty area and do that. So obviously, piggybacking on what Ian said, you want to make sure that you're practicing these situations, so whomever you're putting in as the extra attacker also knows, what their role is in this situation as well. So talking about it in terms of offense, just some stuff we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about 7-on-6 and as well as 7 against 5, how that might look. So in terms of a 7-on-6, just your standard structure that immediately comes to mind generally is probably your 4-3, maybe what might look like a 6-on-5 on the bottom line, and then you just stick a third player up top, or you can kind of reverse that and put 3 down low and 4 up top. And we're also going to discuss a different formation called a 2-3-2. Or what we're Ian's thrown out. We've thrown out. And then we're also going to have you guys draw some ideas. Maybe you on there already have some different formations. We're going to let you guys share those with everybody as well. So in terms of the 4-3 formation, just as kind of just drawing it up, green being offense, the orange being on D, yellow being the ball, and I just put in number 7 as the 7th attacker for the green team. This might look like what a 4-3 formation may look like. Again, it's just playing around with it. And talking about some of the positives that I see with this, okay? It's familiar, as I mentioned. It's kind of has that 6-on-5 look with the 4 players down low. Certainly you're not limited to those numbers. So if you're taking notes diligently, I appreciate that certainly, but this doesn't mean that you have to have 1 here. Your center has to go to the 2 post, your 3 player. You can put whomever you want where. Those are just, frankly, just to give you a visual. But that's that 6-on-5 structure. You're kind of splitting a little bit wider up top, and you've got the 3 players up top. The other thing that might be familiar to with your players is kind of this triangle up here between number 2, number 7, and 4, kind of attacking these 2 players in here. So you're kind of attacking that 23 or 43 gap. So you have a little bit of familiarity with that. The other thing, if they are pressed down low, you've got 3 players handling the ball. So you have an option of just, hey, we're going to practice with just our 3 best ball handlers, 3 best shooters, and we're going to go against these 2, and then hopefully we get a good look at the cage. These are, as I mentioned, if it's these 3, these are probably your 3 shooting options. You also have some players down low here on the post for any rebounds that might occur. Certainly there's some negatives against this, and your only real option without a lot of movement is probably an outside shot. There's more shot blockers down low. It's also very easy with 1 and 5 here, as I've drawn them, to be out wide, having bad angles, especially if 5's a righty. So X5 and X1 can certainly come in to help shot block. And the goalie kind of stays within a small little range, so he or she does not have that far to move. So you're not really stretching out the defense too much. Kind of drew this up as in Keynote. So things are going to be moving one at a time. It's going to be somewhat slow, but just kind of take a look, and hopefully you can envision the idea as this is playing that the ball is starting up top, kind of attacking forward, drawing one of the defenders to them, kind of finding the open player, moving the ball towards that open player. And that ball, probably that player is moving into space a little bit sooner. Again, in this situation, we're probably down under 30 seconds, less than that, even though this video is probably going to play for about a minute. So, but it's my team, we're slow. But if you can shift and move a little bit, you're going to create a little bit more shooting lanes. And just the idea here of what, again, this is not a play. This is nothing scripted. This is just getting an idea of what may happen on an attack. You might see like I said, X5, X1 jumping in to help in this situation. So you have to be not only diligent about attacking, but also being aware where the defense is, possibly being ready to find the open player. Certainly 2 might slide into that more open water to take that shot there. Okay. Another second, sorry. All right. So this is where the interactive portion would be. So if you can jump over to, let's see, let me pull that up. This slide, I'm going to advance ahead to right here on this slide that you're seeing now on your inactive portion. And you can go ahead and start drawing. And this is giving you an opportunity to see what you might do and share with everyone else on your screen. And as you guys pull that in, you can, if you want to put your name or initials on there, if you want, you can certainly do that. And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing a bunch of people. So, yeah, good. Nice. Any thoughts or questions or any comments?
Yeah, Miguel, I have one thing here watching these start to come in. I think so much of what this does is we're forcing zones faster, obviously, because in the front court this tight, we're probably not going to be having the goalie coming out to match up 7-on-7 when they're this deep in this situation. It happens. Trust me, I do it too every now and then, especially based off the level or the competition that we're playing or the age group. But I think it lends itself so much to movement within here, either filling spaces in the middle or back picks or things like that to kind of shift and get open. So I really appreciate right now watching this, like some of the freedom that I'm seeing, that the filling of space. There's a basic framework that's set up by these 3 formations we're going to show you guys today, but by no means feel like you have to be stuck in any of these formations. And frankly, by teaching all of your athletes how to be smarter and attack water, or take water in these situations, you're going to end up with things that aren't really even true formations, and they'll probably end up working out better than any of these did for us. So
awesome. All right, cool. We're going to go on to the next one. So, and we did that one. All right. So now let's talk about what the 3-4 might look like. So just kind of, instead of having two post players, you still have your center down low, 1 and 5 or a little bit wider there or down there. And then you've kind of, you're still in that umbrella formation. And certainly there's some positives here. You've got more space to attack into. Now you've got 4 outside shooting options. There's fewer zone blockers down low. X1, X5 may not be so keen as to pull off and help. And the goalie has more space that he or she has to cover to travel on some of these wider passes. You're also in a position, if you want, you can try to roll in your wings for a quick post up, possibly. That's an option as well. Some of the negatives I see in this, you've got more players handling the ball, especially if one may be your goaltender. I'm thinking of my goalies specifically. But, if you've got, if you've got 2 or 3 players that you trust, now you're opening it up to a little bit more. But in this formation, assuming the defense does what I've drawn here, you've got 3 active defenders versus 2. And if you do choose to run a post up, you are putting the ball in the water, and you may, there's more options for that ball to get stolen. So let's kind of take a look at what I envision that this may look like in this attack. And as you're seeing this, let me get this going. Sorry about that. As you're seeing this, again, just like the previous slide, attacking space and drawing defenders to you. Certainly if nobody comes to you, just, you keep going and you step in and find your lane to shoot. As we're coming and helping, there is opportunities to move and, again, draw defenders to you. Looking for more options. There's any time is a possibility for a shot if it's there. In this particular attack, you're going to see I've almost diagrammed it similar to what you might do to attack an M zone, where we kind of overload one side, bringing the ball over, creating space. So we're kind of bringing some help or bringing the ball to the right side. And if you were on a couple weeks ago, and Jack Coker, I think he's on here, when he was talking about the 5-1 or the 1-5 clear, this is kind of the same idea. And here I've just kind of drawn more of a double post where the center slides over to give 1 space to draw in, creating a backdoor drive for 2 to catch and shoot. Certainly if you have a lefty, you can put them up at 4 and try it that way. Assuming that, the defense does exactly how I drew it there, but, it never always happens like that. But let's see. But now it's your chance to do that. So let me toggle back to the other one and let you guys go to that slide. Okay, I think this is the one. So if you guys want to have some fun with this, go and draw some different options you might see. And then we'll pull those up for everyone to look at. Cool. And again, certainly any thoughts, comments? Okay, we got 4 people, Ian. That's good.
I think it's good.
So any conversation about that, Ian, you want to talk about?
I think it's, again, I really like this first one on our upper left as I'm looking at the screen. Obviously, there's some movement in all of them, but filling in some open space, making some defenders make some tough decisions. I think something we'll keep talking about here is for the majority of us, and even when we get to the pinnacle level of, being at the Olympics with the highest possible caliber of athlete and supposed highest intelligence, right? As we're talking about all these things, you're still coaching against an athlete, right? And for most of us, it's probably an athlete that's between the ages of 13 and 18. And so they still have to make decisions by themselves. And these things can't happen slow enough for you as a coach to go ahead and dictate exactly how you would be responding to these. So even something silly or ridiculous as like two strokes stepping into a spot or something that you might deem easy to defend against, if you're forcing defense to make tough decisions, then it still should end up working out in some way, shape, or form, even if you're only causing confusion for the other team.
Ian, I think this is the one you were referencing, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So who's on there that drew this? Anyone want to take credit for this one? No? All right. Well.
That's right. Nameless and faceless.
It's their secret play, right? All right. No, that looks. Thank you guys for doing that. I appreciate you guys definitely doing that portion. All right. So let's go to the next one. So.
All right. So this next one here is 2-3-2, and so done a lot of thinking about this. And again, I still feel like I'm in a box when I think about how we're setting up 7 people in our front court here. And essentially, I kind of hark back to what our 6-on-5 rotations look like with a 1 pocket or a 6 pocket, and felt the amount of pressure that we put on teams running these the way we do. Our posts do a lot of pushing of defenders and moving them out of the way to force them to make more tough decisions. So essentially, with a 7th attacker being up top, we essentially created a 1 pocket and 6 pocket simultaneously. And so things that we kind of focus on, and then also there's the extra player that's sitting at about 4.5 meters right in the middle of the pool. And this is all based off of 3 6-on-5s that we run: 1 pocket, 6 pocket, and something that we call moving triangle. And so essentially I combined all 3 of them, not revolutionary by any means. And they're just different ways to challenge defense to figure out how and where they want to be covering. I'm hoping that watching this, or in setting it up, that you're going to run a normal zone kind of defense here, whether it's 7-on-6 or 7-on-5, which is going to allow us to find some inside looks. Possibly if you want to try to front or press portions of this, it's going to give up the opportunity for the 1 spot to maybe take the ball in, or the 6 spot, if we're talking 6-on-5 positions, to maybe take the ball inside and find that cross pass, as well as potentially some movement here between what would be the 2 posts, the 3 posts, and the person that's sitting at about 4.5 meters, where if they operate in this triangle, that we would run normally, that it causes even more confusion and opportunities for a little cross pass. And so now maybe we're getting everyone to suck to the middle of our goal, which makes it a little more difficult for our 4 spot and 5 spot to shoot. But maybe it opens up something for a 1 spot or a 6 spot to kick down into those areas. And then so then the video here, and hold on before you play it, here we go.
Yeah.
My one thing about this video is my team runs this completely wrong, I want to point out here. And the reason why I wanted to use this was really early on in the year. Not that, actually, this is probably like a month and a half before JOs, maybe a month before JOs. And we were trying out some new plays here. And my team runs it totally wrong. And the reason why I wanted to put it in here was because it showed me how easily this can be defended if we overload too many players in one area. So essentially what happens here is the person that's supposed to fill the 3 post doesn't actually go down to that spot. And because they don't actually fill that spot, then the person that's filling what would be 6 pocket is really wide as well. And the defense kind of shifts more towards the 1-2 set, or the 1-2-4 triangle. And they give up this really predictable, really low percentage shot here. You can go ahead and play. So the ball's at our goalie right now. She's swimming it up. They kind of split to move the ball to the 4-5 side. And we just give up this really bad angle shot from all the way over there. There's not a lot of time on the clock. I'll tell you that right now. But there's still way better opportunities here about drawing some defense away maybe from their shot and opening up something else throughout the possession. But we'll get into the defensive portion of it in a little bit.
Ian, I had a question for you on that too. At the end, I'm going to go back and do you want your goal? Was your goalie supposed to move down into that space there?
Yeah, so this kind of gets into like whatever you want to run here, practice it because my goalie is supposed to definitely kick up for sure. And the person that's over, that would be filling 5 or 5 wide, looks like they're trying to get back in transition. And this is the end of a quarter. And so this is really bad awareness by them to know how much time is left, how strong the goalie is. The goalie can't throw the ball full court in this particular situation. And so we should really be selling out a little bit more aggressively here to get the best opportunity as tight as we can or pull them away as much as we can.
I had a couple – I apologize when we had all that stuff at the beginning. We went ahead and muted everybody, and I forgot to unmute you all. So thank you, Ashley, for letting me know that. Paul, I'm going to go back. Paul had a question that we didn't see. And Ian, he said, what are your thoughts about overcrowding? I'm assuming, Paul, you were talking about the previous slides or just in general?
So I think we'll just go overcrowding in general, I guess. I think that's a decision you have to kind of decide about, right? And so I think there's pros and cons to any way that you can set up, right? And so when you're designing plays, and Miguel and I talked about this a little bit last week, you have to understand what the pros and cons are of your play design, right? What your purpose is of your play design and how you want to go ahead and then execute it as a result. And so like I was talking about with that moving triangle here, one of the purposes is to suck too many defenders towards the middle for us. And so if we can go ahead and suck all the defenders down into the middle, we can operate with a 1 or a 6 kicking down towards the 2-meter line and have the shot line that we're looking for with no defense or a defender only to beat.
So for that,
somebody, whoever's talking right now, can we go ahead and get a mute in the background there?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm good at talking over people, but not for a really long amount of time. And so I think, again, it comes down to play design, right? If you put 1 and 1 and 6 all the way down on the 2-meter line, you're trying to pull more people wider maybe, or even in like a 3 on the bottom and 4 up top, you're trying to pull people more up, which opens up the inside, but it also kind of clogs up your perimeter and gives you different options that way. So again, don't feel like you're stuck in any one box, but be creative here, just have an idea of what you're giving up or what you're trying to get the defense to do. Because I think if you go back to the way we talked about play design last week, are you setting up for one tiny opportunity? Are you setting up for some confusion, right? Or is your job?
You guys have any like small pots? Small pots? Yeah.
well, I can grab it while I'm up there if you want.
Somebody's mute them. Okay, so yes, I think that kind of comes down to play design and what you would want. I hope that answers, Paul.
Jack, you had a question about the goalie on the perimeter post. Me personally, I'm putting my goalies on the post for a couple of reasons. One, for the leg portion of it. I think if we're going for a tip in or something like that, but also goalies, I think for me at least, they have this tendency where they're so committed to playing the goal that I almost want them overcommitting to offense. That way they know that if something happens, they're going to be the last player to get all the way back to the goal. So let's just, we're going to go 7-on-7 and I'm going to have that goalie attack the other team's goalie or whatever to get the ball and stay down there and not worry about the goal. But what are your thoughts, Jack?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hey, yeah, this is Felix. So because last year I had an opportunity to coach at the World University Games and a lot of time to discuss this. And that going back to what Jack said about the goalie, I would always, now that this is now the college rule, right? The colleges coaches are going to have to start figuring this out. I would always caution everyone about overcoaching, right? Because it's it's one of these things that you might get excited because you could add this, but you have to kind of almost what Ian said. You got to figure out when you're going to do this, if you're going to do this, and how often are you going to give your team an opportunity to really be really good at this, right? I don't see anyone pulling their goalie or involving their goalie on offense unless they're down, right? Where it doesn't matter, you lose by 1 or you lose by 2. So at that point, whether, if you have a timeout or if you, after a goal, you have your goalie go down to the post because you're like, do you really want the goalie? How often are you going to let the goalie practice shooting on the perimeter at practice, right? So if you're not, then having the ball in their hand at the end of the game might not be the best thing. Almost to what Jack says, there's nothing saying that if with the new rule, the goalie could start with the ball and swim right down to the post. Because again, at that point, if you're down by a goal and this doesn't work, you lose by 1, you lose by 2, you lose the game. So I think that's a good point about how successful is your play going to be is going to determine how often you allow your goalie to practice it, 1, or 2. It doesn't mean the goalie has to have the ball in their hand in this situation. You can literally put the goalie anywhere. Your goalie can be your center for something like this. So, but I would play devil's advocate, and so Ian and Miguel is like, so you see this happening a lot where there's a 6-on-4 on an exclusion. You have 6-on-5, then there's another exclusion, and you see these high-level coaches saying, no, we'll play 5-on-4. So they're eliminating offensive players when they have one to the advantage. So I see that, and I'm thinking, well, the more people involved, the more complicated things get, right? Or they wouldn't do that. So how would you apply that type of mindset when you'd rather go 5-on-4 than 6-on-4 as opposed to a 7-on-6 attack? Does that make sense?
Totally. So one of the things, and I wish I had video of it, but I never actually ended up using it in a situation. But one of the things that I started moving towards was in 7-on-5 situations, if we were going to go ahead and do that, right? End of a quarter, being at a time where we absolutely needed that goal, being out of the math. And I felt like that was going to be the way we were going to beat them. I started using the 7th player, whoever you want to deem that as a picker somewhere in the play. So their job was to eliminate somebody else and take that 7-on-6. And really, we're talking about when we're in 7-on-6, you're still looking at smaller triangles, right? And trying to break it down. So taking that 7-on-6, that probably was somewhere a 4-on-3, and maybe you're able to generate a 3-on-2 out of that, or even like a 3-on-1. And either looking at that initial action then on that quick hit, or then driving that person out of the way to then force defense to overcompensate back the opposite direction and then switch the ball the other way, because now that can become a 4-on-4 possibly. And then the other side becomes that 3-on-1 that you're kind of looking for. But I mean, I agree. I think especially with these things take time. I want to say that one first in my answer, right? So, because I'm sure somebody that starts, or athletes that are starting now at 12 years old, working on 7-on-5 and things like that, and having more freedom in their 6-on-5s can find ways to read these way better, right? But I think it's going to just take time for the game to develop and for the athletes to be smart enough, aware enough to see that big chunk, break it down to something smaller, and be better at breaking that thing apart instead of seeing like, oh my gosh, there's so many hands in front of me. And it comes down to, I think, us as coaches, giving them that freedom. But it also comes down to us as coaches being okay with our kids messing up and having lots of mistakes in the same way.
Ian, I think the other thing to look at too is the IQ of your kids, right? And you and I both coach lots of levels depending on where we are in our club and that sort of thing. And like our younger kids, a lot of the stuff we try to do when we're playing with this and toying with it is keep it within the normal wheelhouse of what those athletes are used to doing. Right. So if you're used to using a wheel motion in your offense, keep that wheel motion in your 7-on-6. Like keep within that what they're comfortable with when you're putting in new situations like this with your athletes as well. If you're working with lower IQ athletes and younger athletes.
And again, as you're looking, maybe not just at your team, I mean, you can look at it as your team, right? If you incorporate things like this early on in your season or early on in your year planning and find ways for the repetition, that maybe by the end of your year or end of your season that you're more okay with what's going on. Or if you're running a club, finding a way to get your younger coaches, younger level coaches to run things like this at the lower ages so that they're more versed in them moving up to the higher ages. Like something we do, we don't really teach counter rotations on 5-on-6 until they're like later on in their 14 in their time. But we've started to do like a 7-on-5 drill that we use for counter rotations, and not being concerned about what it actually looks like counter rotation wise, if it falls into what our counter rotation is. But just doing it to give them that freedom to start seeing what situations like this look like, and doing them as all of a sudden we're sitting here with 12 athletes shooting, right? Having the potential to shoot. So now 12 athletes plus potentially one goalie. All of a sudden I'm running a cage of 13 athletes being totally engaged, working and having fun with some control here, being creative, finding a way to score, putting in different rules for them. Like, you know, if you score 5 in a row, you get to go ahead and stay on offense and things like that. And seeing what naturally comes out for them. You know, I think for me, that's also helped me be more creative because they're thinking in different ways than I'm thinking of. So, you know, I want to see the cool things that they think about, finding little 2-on-1s and 3-on-2s that they're trying to exploit, but also having more data on what works. I think that's the thing for me that's the most frustrating, because like there just isn't enough visual data on, you know, different formations and defenses against those formations and things like that to make what I would deem as an educated guess in this answer for what the best way is to attack it. And so, you know, I think I encourage everyone to try different things in these 3 things, because there's got to be better answers than these 3 things. Jack keeps talking about his new 6-on-5 and his progressions in it. So I'm just waiting to see that, because, you know, that just adds one more thing than just 1 pocket and 6 pocket, 3-3. Like, we just all need to be thinking differently out of these boxes. So.
And kind of to, if there's any hockey fans on here that remember when the NHL overtime went to 3-on-3, everyone anticipated this. You know, at first it was just open ice, up and down, and then now you see it played, and it's very controlled, and teams have the short change, so they're possessing the puck, and there's not this run and gun. And then when they quickly get that opportunity to make that score, then you go, and then all of a sudden it becomes that run and gun. But it's not like that anymore, because people were thinking outside the box a little bit. Jack, did you want to jump in on that, or you did have that question? You kind of prompted that. I don't know if you want to. All right, so we're going to go back to this slide, and we're going to give you guys an opportunity just in general. So at this point, if you can jump to this slide that you see, if you're following along on your other device, draw up your own formation. Doesn't have to, I mean, if you like what we're talking about, or if you have something else, or draw up your own play, scenario, etc., feel free. And we'll start throwing those up there for everyone to see.
Be creative.
Yeah. That way. Only 3 people, all right.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I already drew mine.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I already messed mine. I got to figure out in Keynote how to make those things move faster, because it's a really long possession.
We do a Zoom session on that one.
Yeah. I'm almost 50. The shot clock's getting longer as we age, I guess.
I think these are good. I like this first one. Again, you know, some movement, maybe like a little back pick is in here. Trying to find stepping into some open water and some confusion.
I will say, Felix, to your point about letting the kids think, you know, we were going to go, this winter, we thought our winter league was going to play under the new rules, but because NFHS and we play in Missouri in spring, they decided to still play under NFHS rules. So we, as a club, we followed those. But before we went down to South Florida, we trained for about 2 weeks with it, and we just figured, all right, let's play the 7-on-6, and we let the team kind of come up with their own, and really they just tossed the ball back to the goalie, and then the three player, they all kind of bunched up, and they kind of ran a crisscross with 3 guys ending up on the 2 post, 3 on the 3 post. Everyone was so focused on them. The goalie just sprinted down and just had a perfect look from just inside 5 meters. So, and granted, it was the goalie shooting. Oh, you're muted. Hold on. Can you unmute? Yeah. So the goalie just shot the ball 20 feet over the cage, but
So going back to that, I was the one I do that first play, and basically the red guy is the goalie. I put him on the 3 posts, and I'm gonna have 3 people drive across past him. He's gonna just slide out because no one's expecting the play run for the goalie, and that overpass for the goalie stepping into that open water. So I put my goalie at the 3 posts in that play to kind of give them and that's obviously something I'll make sure that I practice with him, or if I give a goalie switch cap, if I switch the goalie cap. So.
I mean, I will say this. I think there's a lot of things that go to putting a goalie on a post that, I don't want to scare people away from, but now all of a sudden you're taking people that are generally concerned about being caught up in any kind of physicality and uncomfortable swimming away, right? To now you're going to put them in pretty much the most physical position or spot here in our game is playing the post well. And so again, just to what we were talking about earlier, you said you're going to make sure you put him in those situations, right? I would also, and I know you will, but make sure that you're also being patient with him too, right? Because how much has he really done anything when it comes to that, right? And introducing a new skill, even if they're 18, 22 years old at this point, is still like you're coaching a 12-year-old, teaching them how to throw maybe for the first time.
Yeah, just quick. Sorry about that, guys. I could unmute myself for some reason. I like seeing all the plays, and I love hearing all this stuff. Well, I'm a big advocate for making my bottom line, which is my 2-meter line, on the baseline. If you got 7 players, and it really helps out with the traffic, like you're talking about, if you can get 2 to 3, if not 4 players to attack the baseline, you're sinking the defense in, you're crowding the goalie space, and now your outside shooters are getting a better position to shoot. So think about always when you have a man advantage, attacking the baseline to allow that one goalie can be sucked in on one post, so a cross pass makes it open for an easy goal on the other side. So always think of baseline concepts. And then again, the goalie, you guys, thanks for talking about the goalie, because it's really important how you utilize your goalie, where you want to utilize him. If we had Baron McQuinn, a lefty, 6'8", who can shoot the ball, you want to have him shoot the ball. You have some of the goalies I've had in the past, you might want to hide them somehow, like Ian said, use them as picks, right? Use them as people who move and create space. I am not a big advocate for leaving my goalies up top for the fact that they're not good swimmers. They can't get all the way down the other side if the goalie wants to shoot a full-length shot when the possession turns it over. So having them 3 more meters on the base or on the 2-meter line versus 3 meters on the 6-meter line, they're not going to get back in the cage anyway. So utilize that percentages for your offense versus, hey, I got to keep them on the top, because I see this all the time, keeping the goalies up top so that the goalie can sprint back, and there's no need for that unless the situation needs it to happen that way.
Well, and I think there's even more that comes with that too, right? So if you have your goalie on the bottom line and the shot is blocked, your goalie, with hopefully better legs than most people on your team, should be able to play a vertical line over the top of anyone passing and cause a lot of trouble there as well, while somebody's trying to get back and protect your cage too, if for some reason there's an offensive or something like that. But again, all those things have to be practiced, right?
So we're going to talk a little too, Ian, you're going to talk a little bit about 7-on-5.
Yeah. All right. So just basic here defensively, when I think about 7-on-5, and again, this is me being insecure, I guess, a little bit about this, not having enough data to kind of pull from and be able to experiment against too for my teams. I go back to the safest possible thing in my brain. So we practice 5-on-6 cross blocking. We practice 5-on-6 counter rotations a lot. And so the easiest thing for my brain to wrap my head around is we're going to come back into a base set on defense. We're going to come way back in and take away angles We're going to try to play balls that go to a post by jumping up and being on those vertical lines. And we're going to give up a shot from the perimeter, but hopefully a shot from the perimeter that's funneled still to the places that we're expecting it to be funneled to. And again, it's the same thing for us. We would look at any of these formats as a counter rotation against a 1 in or a 6 in for us, or a 1 pocket or a 6 pocket, however you want to think about it, even on a 3-3. For us in our program in a 3-3, we defend a 3-3 this exact same way too. We don't press the bottom and split the top. We put as many blockers where they need to be in our system so that we can funnel the ball to our goalie and force the most predictable shot to where we're ready and prepared to block it. And so my brain goes right to the 7-on-5. Again, we just saw a clip before of Set versus Shores at 16s, and they went ahead and kind of pressed a little bit more towards that one side and gave up a shot a little bit more predictably over there at 6 pocket. There's so much freedom that I think is in here. You just have to be ready to practice it, try it, epically fail, have that vulnerable moment with your athletes, and be okay saying like, look, this doesn't work, or what do you guys think? And maybe what they come up with is better than what you come up with. But I just feel like there's not enough data out there to really show what the best thing is here. And then I think the other thing too is, especially in 7-on-5, the ball moves way too fast if it's in a pure zone for you as a coach to dictate anything, right? So we're talking about smarter athletes in this situation and forcing shots that they have drilled in their brain as being lower percentage shots for their makeup of their team. But again, like there's still so many different variables that are in here that I think I don't like making this decision, right? So 7-on-5, this is how I would do it right now, and hopefully I can get more comfortable kind of breaking this open as we move forward and go ahead and force different things, or figure out ways where my defenses against this can dictate a little bit more about the things that we want to see versus allowing the offense to dictate to us what they want to be seeing.
Ian, there's a question in the chat about that goalie in this defensive situation, asking, is there anything differently the goalie in a 7-on-5, so the defending team needs to be doing differently than against a 7-on-6?
Yeah, so I think it just depends on how you want to defend it. So there's essentially if you want to have an aggressive goalie, right? If you want to basically press everywhere, something that I think about a lot or have done, where we're pressing everywhere. Maybe we're trapping that ball to the 4-5 side, or more specifically, maybe like 4 wide, depending on how it looks to us. Then we can go ahead and have that goalie come out maybe a little bit and help early on. And then we can isolate that shot to maybe 2 positions, which makes the offense a little bit more predictable, allows the goalie to sit in on that position a little bit more and dictate the shot that they're okay seeing. And then I think, again, with 7-on-6 or 7-on-5, the safest possible place is where my brain goes to a lot. So, being in that base position, staying at home, where they would be for us in our 5-man blocking scheme, is that safest possible place, kind of right there in the middle of the cage, with just really tiny steps, maybe some presenting and showing their hands to take away a little bit of cage to make it look like it's a little bit less open.
Cool. Thank you for the question. So again, now back to you, how you guys might envision a 7-on-5 looking, what you might do. So, oops, let me pull that up on this. Sorry. Here you go. We'll let you guys draw it up. And I guess, Felix, this is kind of your point earlier about when you said going 7 on or 6 on 4, right? When you were discussing that? Okay. Well, someone's figured out how to use the numbers. I haven't figured that out yet. So.
Yeah, and I think the biggest things is, as everyone kind of thinks through these right now, obviously, and then in the future, is keeping in those main principles, right? Making sure that you're deciding what you want want to or are able to dictate to the other team. So like, maybe you have a house defense, right, where you drop X1 and X3 back in your cage, and you have your goalie come out a little bit. Now all of a sudden you have 3 more defenders. How you choose to go ahead and move them around and dictate what's going on. And I think the level you're coaching against and the level of your own athletes dictates a lot of things too, what they're capable of or what they're capable of doing on the fly and under pressure situations. But again, like as long as you have an outcome in mind or what you're thinking of, all these things end up being awesome solutions. And what's the worst thing that happens? You get scored on a 7-on-5. I think you're probably supposed to get scored on. So.
Right.
We might have to get James Graham to start running some numbers for us here.
Here's a clear view so you guys can see. Is this you again, Felix? Are you, did I mute you again? Are you unmuted?
Now I am. Yeah.
Is that you?
Yeah. I think if you're going to have that many players involved in it, I think setting up a pick, trying to isolate, like what Ian is saying, looking for the 4-on-3, 3-on-2, and creating it a 2-on-1. And I was just thinking, 5 wide, force somebody in the middle, like almost like a triangle in the middle, to ultimately set a pick to free up, to lock the goalie center cage, and for a quick 4th center to 1, hopefully beating the blocker because the blocker won't be there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's another one swinging it. Yeah.
I like these. These are all good.
Awesome. Oh, wow. Okay. Got work cut out for this.
I like that one.
Very good. Yeah. This is nice too. A lot of movement. 6 going in, 1 going in.
I like the shading on that one towards the 1-2-4 triangle right there. Mm-hmm. Defensively, I don't know if that's on purpose, but forcing that shot from 4 wide or what would be 5 wide, and then forcing that shot from 6 wide. I like those.
Good. Awesome. All right. So just thinking about, go ahead, Ian, I'll let you.
No worries. So in thinking about the other side of this, right? So we talked about, 7-on-5, 7-on-6 defense. We've talked about the offensive portion. You go to click one more time. You got to open up the other side. Thanks. We're talking about 2 basic things here, right? And so I think we're talking about an all-out press where the goalie's out, and some form of trapping and zoning, right? And again, I think there's pros and cons to absolutely everything. And whatever you want to do or whatever you choose to focus on, just know that you're weighing some pros and cons, and there's a sliding scale here between how aggressive or not aggressive you're open to being in all these situations. So in the all-out press here, you're in passing lanes and you're taking away shot lines. This is, for me, it's one of my absolute favorite things to do on 5-man defense, just in general, is coming out and pressing absolutely everywhere. Because inevitably the team that I'm playing has some kind of a rotation or something set up. And now, again, situations that teams don't often play against, right? We talked about this last week with lots of crossing movement, lots of different things. Abnormal situations cause a lot of havoc in teams that are coached really well, all the way down to teams that aren't coached really well, because they're abnormal. They're not usually focused on. So you're in these high passing lanes, you're trying to steal the ball, you're trying to play a ball if you do foul and limit whatever that shot is or force the ball to go really wide or high over the cage. And then there's some more things that I think just aren't really fleshed out enough here. You can run different traps and zones, right? With 7 people, I can bait the ball to the 4 spot if I want to go ahead and LTD someone there at 5 and trap the ball there and then go ahead and press them and make it look like they're really, really open, even pulling out my goalie maybe a little bit to make them believe that they can shoot a little bit more, and then have that goalie kind of jumping back and going between 7-man and 6-man kind of defensive ideas there and principles. So there's lots of different things. And then again, I keep saying this, but like, you're not coaching against the coach that's on the other side of you, right? Or sorry, you're coaching against him or her, but you're not playing against them. Okay. So remember that at the end of the day, your team is playing against another team of same aged athletes. And so those are the ones that you're trying to beat. And so even though you might be able to outthink the other coach or outcoach the other coach, if your athletes in the water can't figure out what's going on because they're confused and they can't run it, well, then you're losing, right? Or potentially you're winning on the other end of that.
Yeah, and I also, just to add on that, I also think it's important to know, like, when you're doing these things, because I'm thinking about this as well. So I appreciate you guys opening this up, because it starts letting me think about what my options, and I'm a pretty conservative person. If how far am I? What are the chances I'm willing to take, right, to do this? And what I keep telling myself, if it's not going to work against my top competition that we're trying to win the game, I don't know if I'm not willing to do it against them, I don't know if I'm willing to do it against a game that I'm winning by 10 or losing by 10. As far as like, if to have your athletes feel comfortable that they can be successful. And then, I don't know, it's been a while since I coached at an age group level, so it's kind of difficult for me to kind of know what you go through in this type of their attention span. But I'm having it like, is this something that I need to start considering taking seriously, to devote an hour a week of practice for?
So I would challenge you this way, right? So if you don't feel comfortable taking that risk in a game, how mad are you going to be when you go play Teddy and he has the ball at the end of the quarter and runs 4 end of quarter 7-on-6 or 7-on-5 situations? And so I would challenge you and anyone to look at the other side of that. Like, for me, I consider myself very conservative as well in terms of the risks that we take during a game. But we practice this not because I want to be ready to run it a lot, but because I want my athletes to be prepared to know what to do in those situations.
Great point. Great point.
So I would challenge you back the other way.
Great point. Thank you.
So along those lines, Felix, and and Jack referenced earlier having the goalie up front. I'm putting my goalie. If we come out of a timeout in this situation, I'm going to tell my 7th attacker, my goalie, go guard the other goalie. We've given up the goal. I'm not worried about guarding the goal anymore. And on Monday's call, if you were on Monday's call with Jack and he referenced the currency, possessions as being currency, if you can create them, if you can create an opportunity, whether it's through a trap or something like that, for somebody just to get a wide-eyed, ill-advised shot. In the Midwest, we're playing indoors, shallow, deep, 6-lane pools. If you've ever coached in there, you know how loud – you can't even coach. You're talking, but nobody hears you. And if all of a sudden somebody has the ball and the goal's open, everyone's just yelling, shoot, shoot, shoot. Coach is probably telling you, don't shoot, but everyone in the stands. So you might be able to create an opportunity where somebody's just taking, especially from the other end, they're taking a half-court shot, and maybe you get that a shot under pressure, which was, I know on Jack's talk, that was the last shot available. Granted, there's no goalie there, so chances could go in, but at this point, I see you have nothing to give up if you're on that all-out press.
All right, so here again, I use this example. This is a 7-on-7 situation here. We're down by 1 in this game, right near the end of the game, and we go ahead and play it right now. All right, so this is coming out of a timeout here. So it's the other team's ball. They're starting with it at half tank. And you can see some confusion on the white team right now. It's the team that I'm coaching. We're actually not pressing everywhere that we should be pressing. And so we give up a really direct pass to the person that would be at their center position. And if you go back just a little bit.
Hang on, sorry about that. Out here?
Right there, and just, back a little bit more, sorry. You can just go to the beginning of it, if you can.
I'm just going to enlarge it so I can't. Here we go.
Perfect. So right here, because we're not pressing the ball, if we were in a better situation and actually matched up with their other goalie, because their other goalie actually makes this pass, or their own goalie makes this pass right now, if we were actually matched up instead of double teaming nobody in the middle of the pool, then I would venture to say that this pass doesn't actually land on this athlete's hand. And it probably becomes a turnover for our goalie to play in the air, or at least force a worse angle shot for this person to go ahead and take the shot they took. Now, this situation here, they're pressing us 7-on-7 again. They're up 2 in this situation. And again, this is their choice to go ahead and kind of run this against us. They're up 2 goals at this point in this game. And they, again, are running something against us in 7-on-7 that we're not expecting in this situation. So it's a risk, a big risk that they can take, right? If we scored very quickly and there was enough time on the clock, then we would go ahead and be back in the math, as I would call it. But again, I'm not expecting them to come out in a 7-on-7 situation. I will completely be honest in that. With them pulling their goal and pressing us everywhere, we got to play. We're down. We're ready to go. We're ready to get it. We've practiced it a lot. And now all of a sudden my goalie is being pressed, knowing all the other things that go on in this situation. Again, I can find an answer to this, but is my 16-year-old athlete that's a goalie going to be able to find the answer to this? The answer is no, because she turns the ball over immediately and throws the ball to the other team. Luckily, we do find a way to get the ball back there slightly after, but the biggest thing there is time, and they stole more time from us in that situation. So that's the thing that ended up hurting us. So again, to what Felix and I were just talking about, like, I would challenge everyone to at least find a way to put something like this in your practices, even if it's early in the season, even if it's in playoff prep, whatever that is, but get enough of it in there where if you don't want to run it, your team's at least comfortable enough with concepts that you agree with to defend against it. And that goes for 5-on-7, 5-on-6, and 7-on-7 for all these kind of concepts that are in there, because more and more coaches are going to be trying them. It's obviously impacting way more levels now at this point, right? Going all the way up now into the collegiate game. And so more people are going to be trying it. And so you just need to be more prepared for it.
Paul, you had a question about?
Yeah, I was curious. So like all these scenarios, there's clearly like a sense of urgency in the game. And I'm curious if you do anything in a practice to create that type of sense. Do you do anything differently in your practices to create that or simulate that urgency?
Yeah, so something we do a lot is, so we'll talk about the situation, but we try to play at the end of every practice, even club, high school, whatever it is. High school is way easier because we have a little bit more built-in time. And so we have some kind of game that goes on at the end of every single practice. But even with club, we are always trying to end our practice in a game situation. Everything's leading to those situations the way we build our practice. So we'll throw in and challenge our coaches or situations where, okay, we're playing a game and there's 7 minutes left and the white team's up by 2, right? And so we'll have a conversation with our coaches and just go like, hey, okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead now and say, look, we're going to call a timeout if it gets to this situation, run a 7-on-6. Or, we have a name. It's not creative, but we call our 7-on-6 times 7. And so anytime our athletes hear 7, they know that we're pulling our goalie out and we're going in flow of game into these situations that we've deemed. So we'll just call it out at times to put pressure on them in these game situations and give them the reps kind of as we go from there. And then I'm a big fan too of like, if it fails in that moment, even though we're talking about being in a game situation, right? They're playing one game in the fourth quarter up by 2. We'll stop it and run 5 reps right there of what it looks like to give them some more time in that moment. And there's still a little collateral pressure that's put on them from already being in that moment, I feel.
Cool. And Sam had a question about 7-on-6 sprint plays. So I thought that's different.
Why not, right? Yeah, why not, man? It's something I haven't even really thought about, but that's, that's the thing. We should be talking about 7-on-6 sprint plays and, having somebody closer to the line too. I mean, something I do is have I have my goalie sometimes coming out a little bit. I talked about it in the beginning of the session where they're just closer to help and facilitate, which can cause some issues. But, I love sprinting up there, knowing you're going to win or recognizing that you're going to win and getting up there to attack it off the line. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
We need to get on a call together, Sam, and hash some of these out. I like that.
So now Ian's going to talk about just the flip side. We talked about the offensive side and then being on the defensive end in our own 7-man, but how do you defend against 7 from 6 players?
Yeah, so both of these slides, I'll be honest, are really, really similar here, and it's kind of some things that we've alluded to here. But, and again, this is how I think about it. I challenge you to think about it differently, or take these principles and make them their own, steal them, and find a way to make them better. So the first thing that I always think about is, what can you dictate, right? So can I dictate isolating a shooter in one area of the pool? Right. And so I personally feel like that we can do that pretty well. It breaks down to a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-2, depending on how off someone you're choosing to play or how much splitting you're looking to do. I think you can also eliminate a certain threat. So I can actually turn a 7-on-6 into more of a 7-on-5 because Ben Halleck is in the middle of the pool and I want to have 2 people on him. But know that if I do take away that threat by double teaming, that now I'm putting less pressure on a ball. So there's pros and cons to everything that we're doing here. I can also take away a specific area of the cage, right? So I can choose to not defend one position and take away part of that cage. And that doesn't necessarily need to mean coming back into your own goal, right? Don't be limited by that box. Again, if you think about 5-man principles here, by having an area of responsibility that you're taking away, you can deem certain sections of your defense as funnel field blockers and certain sections of your defense as more of a press. And so you can talk about dictating the ball to go to one area, we're pressing away to one side, and we're funneling the ball to a certain place to make it more blockable for our goalie. And then you're mostly living in zone defense principles. I think this is really important here because there's press principles and there's zone defense principles, and we're not going to get into all of them right now. But the way you operate defensively in a press is different than how you operate, at least for me, in a zone. And so my team knows that we're operating in zone defense principles. So in how we're defending drives on the opposite side, and how we're recovering back to center and how we're generally aware, they're always thinking about those zone defensive principles because we're not having any pressure on the ball. Slight pressure on the ball. So this is just 2 clips to watch here. Again, this is 7-on-6 at the end of the game, and we'll just watch them through live, and then we'll go ahead and jump back and talk about them. Just swinging the ball up. You can see the white player kind of step over to the goalie and giving up a pass to the outside. This is really clearly kind of like a press and split everywhere. And again, situational awareness. This is the end of a quarter. Why is the goalie getting back into her own goal here? Not really sure, but again, probably not a situation she's practiced very often. And then there's some other things that come out of this as you start to watch it and think and be creative. Like this shot happens cross cage, right? And so now the ball is blocked and the defense in white, which is my team, is fronting to the ball and splitting between these 2 places. Well, the ball is tipped and it actually ends up right in front of the 2 posts and could be received by the player that's going to jump the goalie right here. Like, not that I want to tell everyone to run a rush the goalie set play all the time, but just ideas to think about here that how you choose to defend this can influence what you want to give up, right? Or sorry, what you want to give up or are okay giving up can influence how you want to be defending certain plays. So like this was, again, really early on in me thinking about 7-on-6 here and how to defend it. Front everywhere, limit the shot to exactly where we wanted to limit it to. But then we gave up this long distance shot, which is great. But now this long distance shot gave up a knockdown right in front of our goal, to which then we were kind of beat on that post for. So we shifted how we were going to play those posts then to being more horizontal or parallel with them in this situation. And now we're continuing to kind of evolve a little bit more. And then the last thing is dictating 7-on-5. Hold on for dear life. I mean, I think that's really the biggest one here, right? You can take away specific areas of cage with final field blocking and the way I kind of talked about being all the way back in that base defensive position. And you're almost exclusively in zone defensive principles here, or 5-man principles. I feel like, again, this is me, challenge them. Please challenge them. By no ways are these innovative in any way, shape, or form. Find new ways, find different ways to go ahead and challenge these and push our game further by challenging the way that you're choosing to play defense in these situations.
And I would just add, I think a lot of this is going to be, we're going to find what works, just turning it on, telling the field players, telling your team, just go play with no direction and let's see what happens, and almost let them create something and just watch them play and see what happens.
And knowing your personnel too, right? Like if you have a fantastic goalie, the decisions you're making might be different than if you don't have a lot of confidence in them, or, they have a great shooter that you're playing against, or these different things. Like all of these variables dictate how you want to play them, but just have a mindset of how you're facilitating the answers that you're trying to find.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. Sorry this went so long. I appreciate you guys sticking with us with all the nonsense at the beginning, and hopefully that won't happen again. But I really appreciate you guys doing this. This will be recorded, or this is being recorded, so we'll have copies. If you know someone that was trying to get in, we try to step up the security there a little bit. So there were some people maybe didn't get in that wanted to. We apologize about that. But it's nice to see a lot of people on here. Cool. Anything to add, Ian?
No, my biggest thing is the same thing I keep saying. Challenge all of these and be creative. Please be creative. Watch other sports. Watch basketball. Watch lacrosse. Steal all of their plays. Try them out, and then you can let me know too how they work out. But be creative here, right? It's very rare that we enter a world where, especially in our sport, I feel like is new territory, and this really is new territory. If you even try to find like international games, there's so little repetitions of this on the international stage because coaches are afraid to try it in big games, right? And they're afraid to try it in any of these even scrimmages and moments that they're having. So try it, be creative, push the curve on all of these things, and not just this, but on how you guys are thinking about coaching and teaching the game anyways, right? Get out of the box that's straight up and down, boring water polo, and be creative based off what you have or what your experiences are or what you want to try. Like, be a great Italian cook and throw stuff at the wall until it sticks, So.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.